seated for a moment, if you would. I just want to talk to you for a moment out of my heart. And if you're still praying, don't stop. Don't let me break up what the Lord is doing. Sharon and I, we went to be with family this week. Some of them we haven't seen in years, and it was good to be with our family. And the whole time we were gone, I was wrestling with this message. It's a good message. God gave it to me, and I might preach it sometime. But I wrestled with it all the way, all weekend. I told Sharon, I said, Josh had called and said, Dad, I need to know the points of your sermon. I said, well, they're by the computer. But he said, I'm at home. And I was trying to bring up the points of my sermon, and I had them all down. And then my mind just went blank, and I knew right then God was going to do something today different. Paul calls that the foolishness of preaching. I don't consider my job foolishness, but I know what he means by that. Especially in a time like this when God can say more in 10 seconds and we can say in 10 hours, or God can do more. Have you felt the presence? Is it just me? Or these that were standing? Have you felt the awesome power and presence of the Holy Spirit? In my study for this message this week, I learned that, and it was brought to my attention. We're going to sing that song in a minute, in case y'all want. We're going to do it. So bear with me. Jesus left all the glory. He left the ivory palaces, whatever those beautiful palaces made up in heaven. He left all of that to take on humanity, literally poverty as a man. Do you realize that one day he was preaching and he had to borrow a coin to make his illustration? It was time for him and the disciples to pay their taxes, and he told Peter, he said, Peter, you're going to have to go down there and go fishing. Peter thought, well, I'll go down there and catch some fish, and we'll sell the fish, and he must want me to use the money to pay the taxes. Peter goes down there, throws out a line, catches a fish, and there's enough money in the fish's mouth. Brother Joel, wouldn't it be something you go out to the Skyway next week, you're going to catch that redfish, and you catch him, and when you get there, about $50 just falls out of his mouth. Wouldn't that be nice? Jesus had a way of being provided for. But he usually had to borrow something, or he's going to ride into Jerusalem on a borrowed colt. One man there in Luke chapter 9 says, Lord, I will follow you. Verse 57. And in verse 58, Jesus says, well, no, wait a minute. You know, I'm not one of those high-ranking rabbis that preaches the prosperity message. That somebody gave me a jet airplane last year. And I don't stay in the Hyatt or the Hilton. As a matter of fact, says, Jesus turns to him in verse 58 and says, foxes have their holes and birds have their nests, but I don't even have a place to call home. You want to go with me? Then another man comes to Jesus and says, Lord, I'll follow you. But he says, before I go, Jesus says, that's great. He says, but before I go, I got to go bury my dad. He died. And Jesus said, if you return to bury your father, he says, let the dead bury the dead. If you're really going to follow me, you've got to really be willing to let go of all that stuff. What a cost it is to follow Jesus. You better not get into it for the money. I don't care who preaches what. don't do it for the money. I believe Philippians 4:19, my God will supply all of my needs according to his riches of glory. And I can concur with the psalmist that I've never seen the righteous forsaken or a seed begging bread. And then one man, Jesus says, come and follow me. He said, well, Lord, I'd love to, but let me first go bid farewell to my family that's at home. My in-laws just came in. They're visiting with me. I want to go bid them goodbye. Jesus told him, no man, after putting his shoulder to the plow and puts the plow down, leaves to go back for any reason, is worthy to follow me, is fit to follow me. John and Joan, it's good to have you visiting us today. Carolyn, we're glad to have you in our home. But if Jesus walks in and says, John, follow me, well, there's a McDonald's around the corner, there's a Carrabba's up the road. I'm going to have to go with you. So all that preaching I could have shared with you today was just this. Count the cost to follow Jesus. Jesus said in Luke chapter 14, verse 28, he says, which one of you, if you're going to build a tower, before you lay the foundation, but not first sit down and count the cost? John Stott says that the landscape of Christendom is scattered with derelict towers that are unfinished. So many people who have put on a likeness of Christianity, a thin skin of Christianity, go through the motions of Christianity, but when the trial comes, they can't stand. They never finish the work that God has called. There's a cost that the Bible does not imply. Jesus is quite emphatic about it. Take up your cross and follow me. I told the class Wednesday night, and I'd like for you to stand. I told the congregation Wednesday night, if we're going to be effective, fruitful, discipling church, we have to be, first of all, effective and fruitful disciples. Those disciples. Matthew, tax collector, a lot of responsibility. Jesus says, follow me. Matthew left it all and followed Jesus. Peter, James, and John, mending their nets. Obligation to their family, their livelihood. Jesus comes by and says, follow me, I will make you fishers of men. They left their nets and followed Jesus. Now, did they deny their family? Did they ignore their family? Did they abandon their family? No, because we know for a fact that later Jesus performs a miracle at Peter's mother-in-law's house. Those in-laws. My cousin came up to me yesterday at the family reunion and says, John, he says, good to see you. He says, we got all the in-laws and the outlaws here today. I said, yeah, that's for sure. He says, you know the difference between an in-law and an outlaw? And I said, no, what's the difference? He said, outlaws are wanted. I threw that in there. Jesus, these men loved their families, but they followed Jesus first. They knew, they saw in him, they heard in his words, Keith, that if you'll put me first, all of that's going to be taken care of. I'm going to add all of this stuff to you, but you've got to put me first. Count the cost. Count the cost. What's it going to cost for me to follow Jesus? To give it all up for Jesus. To say, okay, Lord, it's not me, it's you. What's it going to cost? What's it going to cost?